Students, today we start with the first chapter, lesson 1, integers. You have already studied about this integers in your previous class. First, I will revise what you have learned in the previous class. So, what are integers? Integers include natural numbers, zero, and negative numbers. Now, what are natural numbers? Natural numbers are all your counting numbers, like you start from 1, counting from 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. So, the natural numbers start from 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and till infinite. There is no limit to the numbers. So, all the natural numbers, these all can be also called as positive numbers. And when to this set of natural numbers I include 0, so that becomes whole numbers. So integers include natural numbers, 0, and the negative numbers. Now what are negative numbers? To these positive numbers, if I add the sign of negative, they become negative numbers. So all the negative numbers it includes. So integers include natural numbers, all the positive numbers, 0, and the negative numbers. If I plot these integers on the number line, so you can see that in the center you have 0, to the right of 0 you have positive numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and to the left of 0 you have all the negative numbers. So these positive numbers, these negative numbers, and this 0, all these three make your integers, and 0 is neither negative nor positive. So I don't assign any sign to 0. It's neither positive nor negative. So again, what integers include? Integers include all the positive numbers, 0, and all the negative numbers. So to the right of the 0 numbers, to the right of the 0, all these positive numbers are bigger than 0, and all the negative numbers are smaller than 0. Now we'll start with the exercise. Exercise 1A. So in this chapter you will learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide the integers. So the first exercise is based on addition and subtraction of integers. So before you learn how to add or subtract, you must learn some of the rules of adding and subtracting the integers. Now when you add integers, either you will have both the integers positive, or you can have both the integers negative, or you can have one integer positive and one integer negative. So you can have three type of situations. Either you get both the integers which you have to add positive, or both the integers are negative, means they have the same signs. Both the integers positive or both the integers negative, they have the same sign. Then you have to add the integers. But if one is positive and one is negative, then you have to subtract the integers. You can add the integers only when their sign is the same. Either both the integers are positive or both the integers are negative, then you can add the integers. And if one of the integer is positive and one is negative, then you cannot add them, you have to subtract the integer. Now what about the sign of the answer? The sum that you will get, the answer that you will get, what the sign they will have. You can learn this, that the sign of the answer or result depends upon the greater number. Whichever number is greater, we will have the sign of that number in the answer. So let me write these rules here. If you have both the integers positive, if you have both the integer is negative, then you have to add, and if one integer is positive and one is negative, you have to subtract, and the sign of the result will always be the sign of the greater number. Now let's do exercise 1a. In exercise 1a, the first question is evaluate. You have to add. It's given 15 plus minus 8. So as you can see, one of the integer is positive. When you don't have any sign in front of the integer, it means it's positive. So it means this is positive integer and this is a negative integer. So I said if one is positive, one is negative, you have to subtract. So it means I have to subtract these two integers. So 15 and minus 8. So you will get the answer 7. And what about the sign? The sign will be of the greater integer. Which integer is greater? 15 is greater and it's positive. So your answer will be positive. Now I will take one more example. I'll take the third part. It says minus 7 plus minus 23. Now in this you will see that both the integers are negative. I have to add two negative integers. So when the integers have the same sign, it means I have to add them. It means I have to add both the integers. So it will become 30. And what about the sign? I said the sign is always of the bigger integer. So which integer is bigger? So 23 is bigger. So its sign is negative. So put a negative sign over here. So the answer is minus 30. Now I'll take one more example. Let me do the fifth part. Fifth part says 53 plus minus 26. So as you can see, this is positive and this is negative. So what the rule says is if one of the integer is positive and one is negative, you have to subtract them. It means I have to subtract these two integers. So what you will get? You will get 27. Now what about the sign? I said the sign always will be of the bigger integer. Now out of these, which integer is bigger? 53 is bigger and it is positive, so your answer will be positive 27. Okay, now I'll come to the question number 2. Now question number 2 also says find the sum of, means I have to add. So 153 and minus 302. So I have to add them, and you can see one is positive and one is negative. So what rule? Positive and negative, it means I have to subtract. So minus 302 and 153. So one is positive, one is negative, so it means I have to subtract them. So answer is 149. And what about the sign? The sign always is of the bigger integer. So bigger integer is negative. So my answer also will be negative. Now I'll solve one more sum. I'll take the fourth part. Now fourth part says minus 489 and minus 324. Now as you can see, both the integers are negative, and what the rule says is if both integers of the same size, either both of them are negative or both of them are positive, I have to add them. It means minus 489 and minus 324 I have to add. So I have to add. And what about the sign? The sign, you can just remember one rule. The sign is always of the bigger integer. The bigger integer is negative, so write the sign negative. So hope you have understood. Okay, now I'll come to the third question. The third question says find the additive inverse. Now additive inverse. Now what does additive inverse means? Additive inverse means opposite of the integer. Opposite. If you are given integer if you have an integer positive, its additive inverse will be opposite, means it will be -4. If you have the integer -6, its additive inverse will be +6, means we have to change the sign of that number. So what does additive inverse means? If you have a positive integer, it becomes negative, and if you have a negative, it becomes positive. And if you add two opposite integers like +4 and -4, you will always get the answer 0. If you add -6 and +6, your answer always will be 0. So this is called additive inverse, means the opposite of the given integer. If you add the opposite of the given integer, your answer always will be 0. Now come to the third question. So I have to write the additive inverse. So the numbers given are these. So what is the negative integer of -83? It's +83, the opposite of this number. And what is the additive inverse of 256? This is positive, so its additive inverse is -256. And what is the additive inverse of 0? And in the beginning I told you that 0 does not have any sign. I cannot put any sign for 0, so it's neither negative nor positive. So what is the additive inverse of 0? It's 0 only, without any sign. And this is -2001, so its additive inverse is +2001. So this additive inverse you have to keep in mind while doing the subtraction of integers. While doing the subtraction, this we apply in the subtraction of the integers. So our next question is on subtraction only. Now see how do we subtract the integers. 28 from -42. One of the integer is positive and one is negative. So in subtraction, first of all I'll write the sum. So this sum is to subtract. So first of all I'll form the question for this. It's from. From means I have to write this number first. So from -42 I have to subtract 28. Now how do we subtract? In subtract, first of all I have to make two changes. You can learn it as LCO. Now what does LCO means? So LCO means first leave, means the first number leave as it is, like if it is a negative number, leave as it is, -42. Change C means change, means this sign of minus I have to change into a sign of plus. And O means opposite. Opposite means the second integer I have to write the opposite of it, means the additive inverse of it, means I have to add, I have to change the sign of the second integer. This is a positive number, so it will become a negative number. These two changes we make while subtracting the integers, and you can learn the rule of LCO. Means L means leave the first number as it is, change the sign of negative into positive, and write the opposite of the second integer. It's 28, its opposite is -28. And now this becomes a sum of addition, and we have the same rules for addition. Now here both the numbers are negative, so when you have both the numbers negative, you have to add them. And the sign is of the bigger integer, which is negative, so your answer will be -60. Now let me take one more example. It's -36. This is the second part. -36 from 42. So let me write this sum first. It's written -36. I have to subtract from 42. It means 42 will come first. From 42 I have to subtract -36. Now remember this rule of LCO. So LCO, L means leave the first number as it is. Then comes C means change this sign of minus into a sign of positive. sum of subtraction into a sum of addition, and O means opposite. Now I have to write the opposite of this number. So this is a negative number, it will become a positive number. So now I have to add two positive numbers. 42 also is positive, 36 also is positive, and the rule says when you have to add two positive numbers, you have to add them, and the sign always is of the bigger integer, so it will be positive 78. Now let me do one more example. I will take the fifth part. Let me do the fifth part. It says subtract 318 from 0. From 0 means from 0 I have to subtract 318. So this becomes my sum. From 0 I have to subtract 318. So remember, while subtracting, what you have to keep in mind, LCO means L means leave the first number as it is. C means change the sign of this negative into positive, means I'll change the sum of subtraction into a sum of addition. And the third is opposite. Opposite means you have to write the opposite of the second integer. It's a positive, so it will become minus 318. Now if you have to add one positive and one negative, you have to subtract them. But when I subtract 0 from any number, it's same, and the sign is always of the bigger number, so it will be a negative 318. Now I'll do one more part. I'll do the seventh part, which says minus 64 you have to subtract from 0. Means from 0 I have to subtract minus 64. So again, this is a sum of subtraction, and I have to keep in mind the rule of LCO. L means leave the first digit as it is, change this sign, sum of subtraction into sum of addition, and you have to write the opposite of this number. Opposite of this number will be positive 64. So LCO. So now I have to add these two integers, and both integers are positive, so I have to add, and the sign will be of the greater integer, which is greater. 64 is in greater, so the answer will be plus 64 only. Hope you have understood this. Okay, now I'll come to the fifth question. They say subtract the sum of 878, sum of 7 and 8 from minus 34. Subtract. Now I have to subtract sum of these two numbers. It means I have to add these two numbers, and whatever answer I will get, I have to subtract from minus 34. So there are two steps in this. First of all, I'll get the sum of this. So it means I have to add minus 1032 and 878. First of all, I'll add these two integers, and as you can see, one is positive and one is negative. So I cannot add them, and it means I have to subtract them. I have to subtract them. So what your answer will be? 154. And what about the sign? The bigger integer is negative, so my answer will be negative. So it means the sum of these two numbers is minus 144. So this sum, they are saying subtract the sum of, which is this, from this. So it means minus 154 I have to subtract from minus 34. Subtract from minus 34. So subtract the sum of मेरा ये आया है. So this I have to subtract from minus 34. Now when this from comes, it means minus 34 will come in front. Minus 34 I have to subtract from minus 154. So now I have to subtract this. So again, bring to your mind the rule of LOC, means leave the first number as it is. Sorry, CO, LCO. So leave the first number as it is, change the sign of subtraction into sign of addition, change the sum of subtraction into sum of addition, and write the opposite of the second integer. So this is a positive integer, so it will become negative integer, and it will become a positive integer. Now I have to add. So one of the integers is negative and one of the integers is positive, so I cannot add them. One is positive, one is negative. I cannot add them, I have to subtract them. So 154 minus 34, so the answer is 120. And what about the sign? The sign, the bigger integer is positive, so my answer will be positive. So this is the fifth sum. Okay, the sixth sum is the same, so practice that. Now let's come to the eighth question, which says that you have to simplify so you have to simplify, means you have more than one operations in this, and when you have more than one operations in a number, you have to apply the rule of BODMAS. So it means I have to, according to the BODMAS, I have to solve the brackets first, and brackets also have to solve first the small bracket. Now if I see in this is a sum of subtraction, and this also is a sum of subtraction. So what the rule is, you have to apply the rule of LCO and LCO. So leave the first number as it is, change the sign of negative into positive, and change the sign of subtraction into sum of addition, and make the opposite of the second integer. This is minus 27, it will become positive 27. And again in the second one, again it's a sum of subtraction, so minus 25, leave the first number as it is, and change the sign of subtraction into a sum of addition, and write the opposite of the second integer, which is a negative number, and it will become a positive number. So first of all, you solve within the brackets. Now in the bracket I can see that this is a negative number and this is a positive number. So when you have one negative, one positive, you have to subtract them. So I have to subtract 13 from 27, so this will become 14, and the bigger number is 27, so the answer will be plus 14. And again one is negative and one is positive, so I have to subtract them, and the answer will be 15. And because the positive number is bigger, so my answer will be positive. Now when I add, I have to add, and both the numbers are positive, it means I have to add them, and the answer will be positive only, because the bigger number is positive, so the answer will be positive. Okay, now come to the ninth question. The ninth question says find 36 minus 64 and minus 64 minus 36. They are asking you to find the value of these two, and they are asking you, are they equal? Now when I this is a sum of subtraction, and this also is a sum of subtraction. So it means I have to apply the rule of LCO. Leave the first digit, change the sign of sum of subtraction into a sum of addition, and write the opposite of the second integer, which will be positive 64. First I will solve this part. So 36 plus 64 becomes 100, and both the integers are positive, so I will add them, and the bigger number is 64, positive number, and the answer also will be positive. Now if I come to this, so this is again a sum of subtraction, so leave, change, and opposite of this. So leave the first digit as it is, change the sum of subtraction into a sum of addition, and this positive number 36 I have to change this into minus 36. Now both these numbers have become negative. So when you have both the numbers negative, you again have to add them. And what about the sign? So, and the sign of the bigger integer is negative, so my answer also will be negative. So 100 is answer, positive 100 is answer of this, and positive is, negative is answer of this. So are they equal? So they are not equal, because here I have got answer positive 100 and here I have got negative 100, so both of them are not equal. Okay, now I come to the 10th question. They have given you a statement like this. And they are saying that A is equal to minus 8 and B is equal to minus 7 and C is equal to 6, and you have to verify whether these two are equal or no. Now if you remember, this is the associative property of addition. We have learned in the previous class about the properties. So this is associative property of addition, which says if you have to add three numbers, A plus B plus C, and here also you have A plus B plus C, and if you change the order of those numbers, like here I have to add A and B first, but here I have to add B and C first, and later on I have to add A to them, and if you change their order, it the answer remains the same. This is associative property of addition. So I have to verify whether these two are equal or not. So according to the associative property, if we change the order of the numbers and add them, the answer remains the same. So I'll put the value of A, it's minus 8, plus the value of B is minus 7. So I have to add these first, and plus C is 6. And on the other hand, you have minus 8 plus B, the value of B is minus 7, and plus the C is 6. So I have added the values of A, B and C. So if according to A and B, I have to solve first. So I have written A and B, which I have to add, and both the integers are negative. So when you have both the integers negative, you have to add them, and the sign of the bigger integer, which is minus, so minus plus 6, and I have to add C, and your answer will be minus, and one is negative and one is positive. So if one is negative, one is positive, you have to subtract them. I have to subtract, and the sign will be of the greater integer, which is 15. So answer will be minus 8. Now I come to the second part. Here I have to add B and C first, because they are in the brackets. So I have to add B and C first. So in the B and C, one is positive and one is negative. So if you have one positive, one negative, it means you have to subtract them. So 7 minus 6 is 1. And what about the sign? The bigger integer is 7, which is negative, so my answer will be minus 1. Okay, now I have to add minus 8 and minus 1, and both the integers are negative. It means I have to add them, and the sign will be of the bigger integer, which is negative, minus 8. So my answer, where I have done some mistake, so sorry, this is minus 9, and here also when you add minus 8 and minus 1, both are negative, and I have to add, so my answer will be minus 9. So both of them are equal. So I have verified that A plus B plus C is equal to A plus B plus C. So this is associative property of addition, which says if you take three numbers and add them, and if you change the order of the numbers and same numbers and again add them, the answer will be the same. Now I come to the 11th question. Now they are saying A minus B is not equal to B minus A. I have to verify this. I have to show this. Now this is which property? The commutative property of subtraction. Commutative property of subtraction. If it says that if I subtract two integers and change the order of the integers, the answer is not the same. So this is commutative property of subtraction. Again, what it says is if you take two integers and subtract them, and if you change the order of the integers, like here it's A minus B and here it is B minus A, so answer is not equal. So this is commutative property. Now let's show this. A they are saying is minus 9 and B is minus 6. So let me put the values minus 9 and minus, it's minus 6. So I will change this bracket into curly bracket. So I have to show that these two are not equal. Now B, what is B? It's minus 6, and I have to subtract A, it means minus 9. So here in this minus 9 is in front, and here minus 6 is in the beginning. So this is a sum of subtraction. So again, either you can learn the rule of LCO, or you can say minus and minus, when they are together they become plus. Minus and minus, when they are together they become plus. And here this side again minus and minus becomes plus. Okay, now I have to add one negative, one positive, one negative, one positive, so I cannot add them. It means I have to subtract. So the answer will be minus 3, because the bigger integer is negative, so my answer also will be negative. Now here also the answer 9 minus 6, one is negative, one is positive, so I cannot add them, I have to subtract them, and the answer will be 3. And because this time the bigger number is 9, which is positive, so the answer will be positive. So both the numbers, both the answers are not same, so it's not equal. So I have shown that A minus B is not equal to B minus A, and this is commutative property of subtraction. Okay, now come to the question number 12. They are saying the sum of two integers is minus 16. Now what is sum? Sum means when you add two integers, the answer that you get, the sum of two integers is minus 16, and they are saying one of the integers is 53, find the other integer. I have to find this, so I can say let the other integer be x. So put this as x. So again they are saying the sum of two integers is minus 16. This is the sum, means answer. When you add two numbers, the answer is minus 16. One of the integers is 53 and you have to find the second integer. So I will take it as x. Now you have learned how to, this becomes an equation. You have learned in your previous class how to find the values of x. So I'll keep x this side and I will shift 53 to the other side. Now here it is positive 53, other side it will become negative 53. So now when I have to find both the integers are negative, and when you have both the integers negative, you have to add them. You have to add, and the sign is of the bigger integer, which is negative. So my answer will be negative 69. Okay, now come to the 30 sum. It's the same. They say the sum of two integers is 65. The sum of two integers is 65. If one of the integer is minus 31, so what is the other integer? So I'll put the other integer as x. So I have to find x. So this I will shift to the other side, and here it is a negative integer. That side will become a positive integer. So 65 plus 31, both the integers are positive. So the answer is 96. Now come to the 14th question, which says the difference of an integer a and minus x is 4. Now what do you mean by difference? It means subtraction, and difference means the answer that you get after you subtract two numbers. So they are saying the difference of an integer a and minus 6 is 4. Let me read this question again. They are saying the difference means subtraction of an integer a, and the difference of a and minus 6 is 4. So find the value of a. Now I have to find the value of a. Now first of all, what I will do is, as these two integers are negative, minus, these minus signs are together, minus and minus. Either I said you can, this is a sum of subtraction, you can apply the rule of LCO, like leave the first digit, first number, change the sign of addition into subtraction into addition, and write the opposite of the second number, which is 6, and also minus and minus becomes plus, is equal to 4. So first of all I have to change the sum of subtraction into a sum of addition. Minus and minus becomes plus, and now I will find out the value of a. Now a I'll keep this side, and plus 6 I will send to the other side, and it will become minus 6. So when you solve it, 4 minus 6, so 1 is positive and 1 is negative. So 1 positive, 1 negative, it means you have to subtract them. So 6 may say 4, 2, and the larger integer is negative, so your answer will be negative. So answer will be minus 2. Now come to the 15th question. They are saying write a pair of integers. Pair means two integers. You have to write pair of integer whose sum. You have to add two integers. First part says that you have to find such integers that if you add them you should get 0. Now do you remember the property of additive inverse? When do we get 0? When we add two opposite numbers. So suppose I have minus 2 and I add to this a positive 2. So then your answer is 0. So this you can have the example of minus 2 and plus 2. So when you add these, your answer will be 0. Now second part says that you should get a negative integer. When you add you have to add two integers in such a way that the answer is negative. Now when my answer will be negative, either I add both the negative integers. If I add both the negative integers, my answer will be negative. Or if I add one positive and one negative, and the negative integer is bigger, so your answer will be -2. So in both the cases I get the answer as negative, because here the one is positive, one is negative, and the bigger number is negative, so my answer will be negative. The third part says, so I have to add two integers, find such two integers that answer should be, the sum should be an integer smaller than both the integers. इन दोनों integers से small होना चाहिए उसका answer. So what I can say is, if I take two negative integers and if I add them, so -4 and -3, so what you will get? You will get answer -7. When both the same sign you have to add, and the answer will have the sign of the bigger integer. So my answer is -7, and this sum is smaller than both these integers. Do you remember that as the negative integers increase, their value decreases? Now -3 is smaller than -7 is smaller than -3, and -7 is smaller than -4 also. So these two you can write as examples. Now fourth says you have to add two integers so that the sum is an integer greater. Here you should get the answer of integer which is greater than both the integers. So if I take two positive integers, 2 plus 3 is 5. So this sum is greater than both the integers. So 2 plus 3 is 5, and 5 is greater than 3 also, and 2 also. An integer smaller than only one of the integers. So you have to add two integers so that the answer that you get, the sum that you get, it should be smaller than only one integer. So if I take one negative integer and one, say I take positive integer, so what my answer will be? It will be -2. Now -2 is smaller than this, but -2 is bigger than this, because I said as the negative integers increase, their value decreases. So -2 is greater than -4, but -2 is smaller than 2. So negative numbers are smaller than positive numbers. So they had asked you that the sum should be an integer smaller than only one of the integers. So this is smaller from this only and not from this. So you can have the examples of -4 plus 2. They have already given you the hint. If you see, they have given you the hint after this question. So now come to the 16th question. For each of the following statements, write true and false. The smallest integer is 0. It's false because the negative numbers are smaller than 0. So it's not 0 which is the smallest integer, but the negative integers are smaller than 0. -10 is greater than -7. They are saying -10 is greater than -7. So this is false because as the negative numbers increase, their value decreases. So -10 is not greater, but -10 is smaller than -7. The third part says 0 is larger than every negative integers. In the beginning only I told you when I drew the number line that 0 is smaller than the negative numbers. 0 is bigger than the negative numbers but smaller than the positive numbers. 0 is smaller than the positive numbers but bigger than the negative numbers. So they are asking you 0 is larger than every negative integer. So the statement is true. The sum of two negative integers is a negative integer. Yes, the sum of two negative integers. If I add two negative integers, so the answer will be negative only. So this statement is true. Now come to the fifth part. The sum of a negative integer. The sum, they are saying the sum of a negative integer and a positive integer is always a positive integer. So it cannot be always a positive integer. So this is false. It depends upon what the larger number, what the sign of the larger number is. Suppose here the larger number is -4, and when I add them, the answer will be -2. But they are saying if you add one positive and negative integer, the answer, the sum is always a positive integer. No, it can be a negative integer also. So this statement is false. So children, hope you have understood this chapter.